I'm calling the January 11th, 2022 Tiverton Planning Board meeting to order. We're going to take roll call, and you need to answer audibly now that we're back on Zoom. So I have Janice Gomes.
Here.
Christine Che is absent for now. Amanda Souza Vieira is absent for now. Rosemary Eva.
Here.
Stu Hardy.
Here.
Susan Gill, I'm here. Adam Raposa.
Here.
And Peter Bramonte is not here yet. Okay. So, we also have, is Rick Rogers, I don't see, he's not here, is he? No, I don't see Rick, as DPW director. We have Kelly Ravenel from Steel Engineering. And we have Mike Marcello, our solicitor, and is it Todd Romano?
Yep.
I guess your assistant solicitor. Okay. Well.
Hey, Andrew. Andrew,
what-
can you just? I'm sorry, Andrew. Could you have this meeting recorded as well? Andrew.
Should be all set.
Okay. Thank you.
You know, and first, just a quick announcement for anybody maybe that haven't heard. Jennifer Siciliano, our planner administrative officer, had her baby on Friday. So we offer her congratulations. She had a baby boy, but we are without an administrative officer, town planner, for the time being. So we will do our best to go forward and get the planning board work done the best we can. So, all right, the first item on our agenda is what is it? Brayton Solar, Brayton Road Solar. It is the final plan review. It is for a large ground array, a major land development. Location is Lot A, formerly Plat 503, Lot 103, Plat 505, Lots 101 and 102, which is 390, 394, and 446 Brayton Road. It's in the R80 zoning district. Is for discussion and possible vote. The time clock of 45 days goes to January 15th, 2022. So, Attorney Mancini, you're present if you want to just introduce yourself. You have to do everything audibly tonight. And then if you want to go forward and bring forward and mention who you want him to bring forward into the screen as you're introducing the different people.
Okay, very good. Good evening, members of the board. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yep.
John Mancini on behalf of the owner and the applicant in respect to the proposed major land development project for the installation and construction of a solar facility. As the board is very much aware, this project is certainly, you've seen a lot of this project for a long period of time. We have received master plan approval, preliminary plan approval, and now before you for our final plan. I have with me this evening Joe Duhamel from Brayton Engineering, and I'd like to call him first to allow Joe to go through the plan. There has not been significant change with respect to the preliminary plan that was reviewed by the board and approved back in September of 2021. We have also taken into account all of the conditions which were presented at that hearing and memorialized as part of the written decision. Those conditions have also been made part of the final plan, and they've been comported with respect to final plan. Importantly, the administrative officer has approved the administrative subdivision. We've submitted an operation and maintenance plan, an emergency response plan, a decommissioning plan, a landscaping management plan. We've also have submitted the decommissioning bond and a landscaping proposal for a performance bond. Now, these bonds are in form. They have not been obtained yet, but they will be in the exact form as they've been submitted. Of course, difficult for us to obtain them prior to final plan. I also have Kevin Alverson, who will testify to the landscaping just as a final review to give the board comfort and confidence with regards to what we've proposed previously. And then we're also bringing Deborah Cox, who's from Public Archaeological Laboratory, to talk about one of the conditions, which was the archaeological survey to be completed prior to demolition. And we want to address that concern or issue as well. So For now, Madam Chair, unless there's any questions or comments of me, what I'd like to do is have Joe Duhamel from Dupree go right into kind of a brief overview of the final plan.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Good evening. This is Joe Duhamel from Dupree Engineering. Let me know if you guys can hear me or can't.
Yes.
I also would like the ability to share my screen if that's possible.
I think you should be able to do that.
Not seeing the setting. Oh, here we go.
He's going to come in as a panelist.
Okay.
Hi, Peter. I just wanted to recognize Peter Beaumonte is now present.
All right. Yep. I just was gaining access to share my screen. Give me a second. Okay. So before you tonight is the final plan submission of Brayton Road Solar. We have, since the preliminary plan approval, we have done minor updates to the plans, but largely the site design and the gravel access roads have remained the same as approved by the fire department. Some of the highlighted site plans were some notations regarding demolition notes, site layout notes regarding site fencing specifications, including location of pedestrian and vehicle access points. We have references on the plans, or confirmed all references on the plans have all structures to be removed as part of the conditions of final plan approval. So all sheds, all buildings will be removed as part of the site. 2 of the 3 driveways of the site will be removed and revegetated as such. You know, we also have added notations about to see the landscaping plans for reforestation of the areas to be removed, the buildings and driveways and such. And particulars to see landscaping plans for the callouts for the type of fencing on the site. As you may recall, the site will have a security fence along the entire solar array and access paths and drainage ponds. This would be a 7-foot tall fence, black vinyl in some cases, and Kevin Alverson can discuss that. For the most part, I'll say again, the plans have remained the same. I guess I'll leave the option at this moment. Are there any particular questions about the site plans to date from the planning board?
I think what I'd like to do is have everybody go through their final plan presentations, and then we'll go back to the question and answer, just so we kind of
Certainly.
smoother. That'd be fine. If that's all you have then for now.
Certainly. I will say, as part of the next step of the project, and after the possible vote tonight, we have interconnection of the development to the offsite improvements as part of the approved set by DEM and the previously approved preliminary plan submission. A part of the plan set is a interconnection plan. This interconnection plan describes the connection from the site to the offsite substation located off of Fish Road. It's approximately 4 miles. It will include a proposed underground duct bank and electrical manholes to be located within existing paved roads and cleared areas of state and local right-of-ways. For this installation, no clearing of vegetation along the road shoulders are proposed. So it's as part of the next stage of the project, the applicant will be working with the Department of Public Works under their peer review for the construction design of this conduit. In regards to the plans, that's the main point of discussion. Again, if there's any questions, let me know. I'll
Okay.
go back to the overall.
Okay.
Is as part of the submitted documents, as part of the required legal, a part of the conditions of approval, we have operations maintenance plan for the stormwater management. We have Kevin Alverson's landscape management and maintenance plan for the long-term maintenance of the buffer plantings. And there was a solar maintenance plan provided for how the site will maintain the solar panels and all the infrastructure on site. I could show each of those documents to you if that's
I think what I've broken it down to, we'll organize and go through all the documents as,
okay.
in a group. Yeah.
I could, and I could show them as the board wants. I have them all
All
relatively
right.
available.
Yeah, we'll just go through and discuss them briefly or whatever. If people have questions as we go through them, but I figure we'll get through all your other presentations first.
Okay. As Attorney Mancini has described, we have gone through and provided decommissioning surety bond for the project. That surety bond was reviewed by the town engineer, Steer Engineering, and the town's third-party consultant, Solar Design Associates, who have both reviewed and approved the bond for the site. And just to mention, this decommissioning will describe the infrastructure and the site engineering oversight at the completion of this decommissioning. In addition, they provide a landscape bond which describes the scope of work associated with the buffer plantings. That was provided by Central Nurseries for all the associated bufferings along the project within the selected clearing and such. That's a highlight of the site plan and some of the items that we've provided as part of the final plan application. Again, I can answer any questions this time, but I can give it back to John Mancini to talk about the next.
I think I'd like to have everybody be able to give their presentation. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. And next, I'd like to go and one of the conditions that the planning board submitted a preliminary plan was for the applicant to provide an archaeological survey following demolition of historic structures for possible artifacts. And we have engaged a public agricultural laboratory to perform that and to discuss that. And I'd like to have Deborah Cox, who should be on tonight, to kind of describe that a little bit, talk about the feasibility of that, and also to relate to the board our position with that and what we intend on providing and how we intend on doing that. So with that, if you can allow Deborah Cox to speak from Public Agricultural Laboratory, that would be great.
Sure. I don't know if maybe you want to remove the site plan so we have people, or in case if she's got anything to present. I guess we need that off the screen.
Sure, I can do that.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I was engaged to address the stipulation that an archaeological survey following demolition, the historic structures take place. So my first question or my first comment on that was, normally what would happen is we would do an archaeological survey before any demolition. It is not best practice to do a survey after demolition because the area is too disturbed, the artifacts are out of context, and we would pick up a lot of demolition debris at that point. It could also be, depending on how the demolition happened, it would obscure any features that may be out underground. So I would also like to point out that in 2018, the Rhode Island Historical Preservation and Heritage Commission wrote a letter stating that the properties on this parcel did not meet the criteria for inclusion in the National Register or State Register of Historic Places. Now, the developer does recognize that the property at 446, is it 446 Brayton Road has been there since the early 19th century and has been a part of the history of the town. And as such should be recognized by the town occupants. And therefore they have asked us to sort of develop some ideas that may address your concerns without the archaeological survey, because frankly, without this house being determined a significant property, there aren't artifacts out there that would really tell you anything other than what normally takes place in a 19th century household over the last 200 years. So we thought it might be more appropriate and more beneficial to the town if we partnered with the Historical Society, if we developed a history of this particular parcel and that house and its occupants, and wrote up a document that could be shared with all of the town occupants. It could be the town could put it in any historical documents that they choose to produce in the future. It could be on the website, and it would give us a chance to work with the Historical Society and have them engaged. I mean, I am an archaeologist. We do like Archaeological Survey, but in this case, I really believe that the purposes of an archaeological survey would not best serve the citizens or preserve the history of the site. So, for example, we are working in Little Compton now with the Little Compton Historical Society on histories of several of their farmsteads that are 19th century and 20th centuries. So we are familiar with the history of Tiverton. We would welcome the opportunity, and I know the developers, the developer of the property does want to engage and satisfy this desire for the citizens to have some historical knowledge. And I don't have anything to share on my screen, so that's about it.
Okay.
Thank you. So Madam Chair, our position, I mean, we can certainly meet the condition as set forth in the final plan and as set forth in the preliminary plan as recommended, but we think that it doesn't achieve the goal that was really discussed as part of this application, both at the master plan level and at preliminary plan. In trying to do the survey after the demolition isn't sensical, but rather we would propose to do, as heard from Deborah, a archaeological write-up that could be utilized by the town, done in conjunction with the town, paid for by the developer as part of this project, which would be more meaningful and really better tailored towards this project and better tailored towards what is of significance there and what we have discovered. And I think that is probably a better way to capture the intent of the planning board as opposed to the condition that was memorialized at preliminary plan. Again, we can comport with it, but it's just, I don't think it makes sense to do that. I don't think it's really what the planning board sought. So with that, we offer it to the planning board for discussion and for further evaluation.
Okay.
So, and we can talk about that after our presentation.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, give
So
everybody a chance to digest that.
I would like to address that topic, Susan, when the time is appropriate. When you determine that the time is appropriate, I have a number of things to say about that.
Okay, all right, that'll be fine, Stu.
Okay, so and I just have two very quick witnesses remaining, and that's Kevin Alverson, who's prepared our landscape.
Okay.
Can people hear me or?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Sorry. I didn't know if actually I would like to share my screen if that would please the board as well.
Sure.
Yeah, I need to promote you, so I think I just did.
Yeah, he's the KMA.
Yeah.
Green dot.
All right. Can people see me, hear me now? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Great. Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen. Can everybody see my cursor currently?
Yes. I can.
Okay, great. So as Mr. Duhamel had mentioned earlier on, really no changes to the site layout were completed since the approval at the preliminary period. However, the landscape plan was updated to include a couple of items. One, which was discussed at the, I'm going to zoom in, so hopefully I don't get people seasick. There were some adaptations to the driveway between, or just before the preliminary plan approval that needed to be updated on the landscape plans. That has been completed. So the access road that was part of the requirements of the fire department for safety purposes has been updated on the landscape plan accordingly. That did not change any of the site buffering that we had previously proposed around the site. But all of the updates from the site plan and the engineering plans have been incorporated into this into the overall landscape plan. In addition, what was added in an effort to make it more clear so that things did not get lost in the purposes of the reforestation and habitat management plans that were provided by Sage and presented at the along with our project forester at the preliminary plan stage, was the reforestation areas. And so that's shown as well on these plans now. And it's generally two different formats of two different areas of the reforestation. Areas that are being reforested, aka they're being managed in accordance with the forestry management plan. Those are the areas in light green with the cross hatching that's on there. And then there's areas that are going to be reforested. And these are areas that are currently clear on the site. And those are the areas that are indicated with the dark green hatch as well as the cross hatch. And those areas primarily are focused around where the existing residences or structures, I should say, are placed along the access road. So this area would all be incorporated in the reforestation plan, as well as the areas at the residence that was just previously discussed at the southwest corner of the project site. So those have been incorporated on the landscape plans themselves. Nothing has changed with regard to the site buffering, as I mentioned, or the fencing at the project site. So as Mr. Duhamel had mentioned previously, we have the 7-foot security fencing around the perimeter of the project area. And where they directly abut residential properties, we are including a black chain link fence. But again, that would be along where the site abuts the conservation land at the northeast, and then at the south and southwest areas where it's closest to residences. But again, as previously testified, all of the site fencing is going to be interior of any no-cut buffers, which are all the areas indicated in the light green. All those areas are no-cut areas of the project site. And then there's a selective clearing / grassland habitat management areas, which are the light yellow areas. And then all the supplemental planting, which was reviewed previously at the southwest portions of the site, at the north portion of the site abutting the conservation land, or at the project entrance area. All the fencing is going to be interior of all of that. So interior of no cut vegetative buffer to remain, interior of all of the grassland management areas, and interior of any supplemental plantings. In addition to those updates to the plan, what we did provide as part of the package, as Mr. Duhamel had mentioned, we provided a landscape management, supplemental buffer landscape management and maintenance plan, which was included in the submission to the town. This cross-references some of the operations and maintenance that are outlined in other portions of the project site. And this was something that was discussed with the town planner as how to best incorporate that. So this management plan primarily handles all of the proposed vegetated and supplemental buffering plantings. It does cross-reference, however, the habitat management, and that's noted here, a habitat enhancement plan and forestry management plan, which includes those forestry areas. as well as the grassland habitat management. Those are outlined in SAGE's revised report, which I believe Nicole is here to be able to discuss further if necessary. And then there's also an operations and maintenance component of the project that is outlined in the project engineer's plans. And then there is also a operations and maintenance of the solar array itself. Those are separate documents, but the landscape management of the supplemental buffer is outlined in this memo that's dated 11/9/2021. I don't think I have anything further, unless John, you had any other items you wanted me to discuss?
I think you covered it for now. That'd be great. We'll come back to it if anybody has questions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Did you have somebody else, or was that was all your guests?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. I'm sorry. I'd like to segue into Nicole Malafani from Sage.
Right. Nicole, sorry.
And, Nicole can update us with respect to her submission. She did file a revised habitat enhancement plan and forestry management plan following our preliminary plan discussion or preliminary plan approval. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nicole to summarize her findings per her report.
Okay.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen and just bring up the latest habitat enhancement and forestry management plan. Are you able to see the map and my cursor moving?
Yes.
Okay, good. So Nicole Malafani with Sage Environmental. I've been working on this since the beginning, and one of the components of this project was developing a habitat enhancement plan. We went through this in detail during the preliminary plan approval process, and I'm just going to touch upon any changes to this. There's not anything of substantial updates to it. It was more including some additional areas into our forest management area, and then also incorporating additional areas into our reforested area. So now we have expanded to have more of the reforested area, so that the two buildings, the two structures that will be demolished, those areas are part of the reforestation. We had talked about that during the preliminary, and the updated plan that was submitted on November 9th of 2021 now shows this on the site plan with that, and it matches up with what Kevin Alverson just showed you on the landscaping plan. We also expanded the forestry management area. We added in this area up here, and we also added in all of the reforested area. The reforestation plan was updated by Mark Tremblay from Land Management Services to clearly define that those two structured areas will be part of the reforestation, that it will happen after the demolition of those areas. So the areas include the homestead of 446 Brayton Road, which is down here, as well as the homestead for 394, which includes the house and then the kennel area back here. And then also the, I think there's some cleared area at 390 Brayton that will be part of the reforestation. So in total, there's approximately 10.5 acres of land that will be reforested. The reforestation plan contains, as before, the guidelines of types and species of trees and shrubs to plant, numbers of seedlings, and details on how they are to be planted, and inspection, and who should supervise that. The forest management plan was also developed by Mark Tremblay from Land Management Services. And as I mentioned, it was expanded to include these areas. And the objective, just like before, is to protect the forested area from non-native species and enhance the native wildlife habitat values. And so now all of this area that we have hatched off here, where you see the lines, that's part of the forest management area, and that totals to approximately 35.6 acres. And so this has also been reflected on Kevin Alverson's landscaping plan, so these details don't get lost. As before, the forest management plan provides the details on how the site should be inspected, what controls should be used, that no herbicides would be used, any supplemental plantings that would be necessary. And the intention of this is to develop a more robust and healthy ecosystem. The Grasslands management plan that was developed by Scott Rabideau from Natural Resource Services, there was no substantial updates to that except for changing. There was a section in there that stated the use of herbicides, and that was removed to only say that top cutting will be used to control weeds and that no herbicides would be used. And as reflected in Kevin Alverson's landscaping plans, the grassland management area here is outlined in orange. There's no change to that since the preliminary plan. And again, the intention for this is to promote habitat for rare endangered species. And this total area is approximately 6.6 acres. The other component of the habitat enhancement plan is the nesting boxes that would be planted along the forested edge and the grassland edge. And there's been no change to that whatsoever. I can go through any of the details and specifics of any of the components of the habitat enhancement plan, but it would be reiterating what we had talked about previously. So for the sake of time, I'll leave it at that, but I'm happy to answer any questions that there are.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And so, Madam Chair, that essentially concludes our final plan presentation. We're available with any questions, comments, and would welcome further discussion from here. As you know, we've extended a great amount of resources on completing this and have worked cooperatively with the town and appreciate the effort that the town has provided us in their assistance in time. And hopefully we can conclude this at this point.
Okay. I guess what I did in my mind was divided into two different sections for everybody to discuss or review and ask comments. One is related to all the site and landscape plans, if anybody has questions, comments, or anything like that. And then the other one was I wanted to group all the plans and bonds and all the documents that are to be recorded together. So I don't know if anybody has a preference which one we start with. I just figured if we do it a little more systematically, then hopefully we'll get through everything a little easier. So, okay, nobody's voicing anything. Why don't we start with, because it's already been started on and discussed briefly, is all the plans. So the thing I wanted to go through is as you go through them, I need to know who reviewed them, so that we know that it meets the town standards, or the town is accepting them before we go ahead and approve them, because these are going to be recorded. So the first one I had was the Habitat Enhancement and Forestry Management Plan. That was the one from November 9th that Nicole was just talking about. I don't know if Mike, if you or if Kelly from Steer have reviewed this, if there's any final comments or questions, or if you think it covers everything that needs to be covered for the
Well,
plan.
I'm sorry. I could say that I did get all these plans from Jennifer before she went on leave. I am not a habitat expert. I mean, all I could do is read them. I wouldn't, I'm not a scientist, so I wouldn't say, I couldn't tell you if there's something left out that should be left in, but as far as the form and to general content, I didn't have any problem with them.
Okay. Kelly, do you have any comments or anything of any of this is your area? I mean, it's very thorough and complete, and all the diagrams are very good.
Can you guys hear me as well?
Yes.
Yeah, so Steer doesn't do habitat or environmental type engineering, so we didn't review it for specific conformance, but overall it looked fine to us. But again, we're not habitat specialists.
Okay. All right, does anybody have any questions about it that they wanted to ask? Just a couple of things that I wanted to point out when I read through it was it calls for an annual inspection over the course of 5 years. I guess you have it delineated in there who does the inspections and all that. I don't know if there's a way that the town can get, or the administrative officer, if you can file a report with them, so we can just have it in the file. And there was also a 1-year warranty on the plantings. I don't know if you want to just explain that so everybody understands what the warranty means. I don't know if that would be Nicole or.
So on the planting, we can have Kevin explain that. And with respect to the monitoring, we're not opposed to having as a condition of final plan that the applicant file with the town its maintenance plan annually, or its monitoring plans, however we want to term them. That's perfectly fine.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't know if you just explain what the warranty covers and how that works so everybody understands.
Sure. This is Kevin Alferson, landscape architect. I presume you're referring to the supplemental buffer landscape management plan. This does outline a there's a 1-year contractor's warranty for the initial installation of the plants. Should those plants die within that 1 year, they would be replaced with plants of the same size or generally the same size and species, depending on availability, as what was installed. But in addition to that, the monitoring that was referred to, we outline that in the management plan that there would be site inspections 2 times per year. And that would basically be to go out and to just take a look, to make sure that the supplemental buffering that's been, and this is outlined in the management plan, the supplemental buffering that we intend to be able to provide the buffering to the neighbors is not by any means compromised. So, for example, if a large branch falls off a big tree, takes out one of our small trees, then this allows the opportunity for us to be able to assess that buffer every year to make sure that it's growing in accordance with what it is that we want to have the effective buffer for that. So that's outlined in there for two times a year, basically between either March 15th and May 15th. That would be the first inspection of the year, and the second inspection would be October 15th through November 30th. And that would coincide as well with the general monitoring of the site from a solar operations standpoint as well, so that they're in fact, as though although we're calling out 2 times per year, when there's periodic grass mowings, things like that, there would be additional buffering. Essentially, that's not. I'm sorry, additional monitoring that would not be necessarily outlined in the minimum requirements. So that would be conducted by a landscape professional that would be able to do that appropriately. In the management plan, management and maintenance plan as well, we do outline there's always a chance of invasive species that comes into some of these the vegetative buffers. There's an opportunity for that to happen whenever there's disturbance of old field habitat like this, because there's probably seed bank that's in there that would have bittersweet and bullbriar and things like that are in there that could pose a threat to the trees. The supplemental buffer that we're calling out, that we're allowing for the use of what we call mechanical means, essentially pruning, cutting, pulling, digging of weeds to be able to allow the plants to mature accordingly. And it also outlines that there may be some animal damage that can occur. As we know, deer like to eat everything. So we tried to use deer-resistant species to the greatest extent that we can, but what I find is that deer like new plants. They like to at least try them. So there is an outline in there about how to handle some animal nuisances that may happen out there. Although we're not allowing the use of herbicides or pesticides that are out there, are noxious non-organic materials that could endanger the deer. We are allowing for some organic means of being able to deer control if necessary by a licensed technician, aka like a deer proofing agency, and that would really be required for the initial establishment of the plantings, is what we envision. But certainly that ongoing monitoring of the vegetation that's outlined in the management plan gives us the ability to kind of keep a grasp on how that's going.
So you're saying that the going out and checking on it will go for the life of the solar project, but the warranty will be for 1 year on the plants.
The contractor warranty, yes. So after that 1 year period, it's really about the effectiveness of the buffer that's going to be monitored. So if a tree dies somewhere down the road, it doesn't necessarily mean that that tree needs to be replaced in kind with it. If the other trees have effectively grown in and the shrubbery has grown in to be able to effectively buffer that. But if there is a tree that dies and it leaves a hole, obviously, then we need to replace that. That makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions about this? If not, I mean, if you know, Mike has reviewed it, feels like this is sufficient for the town. We've read through it and it's been explained to us. If everybody's in agreement that this is acceptable, we'll go ahead and move on to the next one. If you object or you have a question, just speak up. Okay. So the next one I had on my list was the stormwater operation and maintenance plan. And I found that from the last meeting, the preliminary plan that Rick Rogers, the DPW director, had reviewed it and verbally said he approved of it. So I don't know, Micah, do you have any other comments on this regarding this plan to be recorded?
No, as long as Rick is okay with it, he's the town engineer, and so if he agrees with it, I'm okay with it.
Okay, all right, so that one's good. We'll move on. The next one I had was the emergency response and solar.
By the way, Susan, I think Rick is in the Rick is in the audience. I can let him speak. Yep.
Oh, is he here? I didn't see him earlier.
He was here. Hold on. Rick, are you there? Rick? I could be wrong, but I thought it was Rick. Rick, you're on mute.
Oh, there he is.
Rick? Not hearing him. Are you hearing him, Sue?
No, Rick, is that Rick Rogers? Can you hear? You're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Okay.
Rick? No. Okay.
If you can get yourself unmuted at some point, just let us know and we'll let you if you have any final comments on the stormwater. But the next one I had was the solar operation maintenance emergency response plan. So I just was wondering who has reviewed this to approve it. The one question I had was, it said that the emergency response plan needed to be approved by the fire marshal. And I couldn't find anything in my records, although they weren't complete. I know that the last thing I saw was that he approved the perimeter roadway, but I don't think we have anything in writing that he's approved this emergency response plan. Do you have something from him that we could put in the file? If not, we would like him to make sure he reviews this. And he gives us consent or agreement, he agrees it or makes whatever suggestions of changes he has before we sign off on it. I don't know, John, do you know of anything in your records?
I don't, Madam Chair. I know that fire has reviewed the plans. I know this was submitted. I'm looking to see if there's anything specific from the fire department. I don't believe that there is. We can certainly follow up, but there's nothing here that is out of the norm with respect to these types of developments. So
Okay.
File it with the fire department and see if there's any issues or anything they want to add to it.
Yeah, if we could just get something from him in writing then to put in the file before recording, I think.
If I can add, maybe prior to the building permit, we can provide the contact information of different response people that are involved. The document submitted details how the site should be operated from a solar standpoint and who to contact. That official record could be part of the future building permit application or prior to recording.
Well, normally, because we've we record all these documents, that comes before you get building permits. So I would just say before recording, I would like to have some verification that it's acceptable.
That's fine.
When the
We can get, I'm sure we can get that pretty quickly, John. I think, I know that it was submitted. I don't know, I'm pretty sure it was submitted to the fire marshal, so.
Yeah, I mean, that's just what we've done with our other ones, and just so we can get all these filed at once. I didn't know if Rick, I don't know if we'll hear from him, or Kelly, if you have any comments on the operation and maintenance plan. I mean, it seems pretty complete, but I'm not anywhere near knowledgeable enough to comment on it. I don't know if anybody else can. Operation and maintenance plan.
Yes, Steer doesn't have any comments for it.
Doesn't have what, sorry, I couldn't. hear.
We do not have any comments for the operations and maintenance.
Okay. Mike, do you have any comments or issues with it? Okay. One thing I wanted to ask, because it's popped up on all the site plans, is I wanted to get clarification on page 3. And here it has as the contact information, the landowner and site operator are both listed as Rhode Island Solar Renewable Energy. So one of the things that I was going to be looking for clarification is who is the owner of the property? And we know that Rhode Island Solar is the applicant, or if they're the operator. I just wanted to get that clarified.
I'm sorry, your question is who's the owner of the property?
Yeah, who owns the property now?
Yeah, so right now the property is still owned by the Souza family and the Brighton estate. But
Okay.
as soon as we receive final plan, we'll be proceeding to closing. And once that's closed, it's going to be owned by probably a subsidiary or parent corporation of RI Solar Renewable Energy, which will then lease the solar field to RI Solar Renewable Energy 4 LLC. So there will be another entity that owns the property, which will then lease it to the company that operates it, which will be the site operator. So that landowner, which is shown on page 3,
Yeah.
Might change from RI Solar Renewable Energy. But as the board's aware, these permits, these plans, they run with the land. So regardless as to who owns, the person subsequent to the recording of the plan becomes a responsible party. And that's the purpose for the recording of the plans and the submission of the same.
Okay. So when the final plan is recorded, is it still going to be owned by the Souzas, or is it going to have transferred by then? You're waiting till the final plan is recorded to change ownership?
Correct. It's a chicken before the egg issue. So it could happen simultaneous. We may close and record at the same time, or we may record and then close shortly thereafter.
Okay. I guess when we get to it, my question is that the final plan needs to reflect who the owner is at the time of recording. So depending on who owns the property, it needs to reflect that. So
And it will. I mean, the final plan is definitely going to reflect who owns it at that time. But so we can record. So right now the plan set has the owners, Souza and Brighton. We can record that way and then convey the property the day after or an hour later, and it doesn't impact the approvals because they run to those owners.
Right. Well, that was my question, was if it changed ownership beforehand, then everything
It'll make no change. So these permits, as you know, run. It's what's noted as running with the land. So it affects all subsequent owners of the property and all operators of the solar facility.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying that. Does anybody else have any other questions about the emergency response and solar operation and maintenance? Okay. So we'll just, whenever it gets recorded, but we'll just get something from the fire marshal. Okay. The next one I had was the landscape and management plan. The one, Kevin Alverson, and then the central nurseries. So those 2 items. I don't know if anybody from the town, Mike, I don't know if you reviewed these. I don't know if this is.
Yeah, again, it's from a form perspective, there's typical what we've seen before in other projects. But I have no problems with but I can't comment the content of it, but yeah.
Right. I'm just saying from a legal point.
Yeah, these are typical agreements. We've seen hundreds of them since.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then I just wanted to understand central nurseries. So they're giving you the proposal of the cost to do all of the plantings. And then are they going to come up, or then you're going to have a bond for this amount that they have proposed? Is that what we're doing?
Correct. So they're going to essentially be our supplier for the planting. They've also given an estimate as to what that cost is. And based on that estimate, we would obtain a performance bond so that in the event that these plantings are not done or there's an issue, the bond is in place to ensure that the plantings go forward. And then you also know that the plantings as proposed is what is going to be completed.
Right. And then does that, I don't know, which one it carries the warranty for a year? Does the bond?
So the warranty for a year is separate from the bond. The warranties between the central nurseries as a supplier and the contractor who actually builds and the owner. So the performance bond is simply that. It's to ensure that there's performance, that the plantings per the landscaping plan are going to be completed the way they've been presented to you. The maintenance and the guarantee is for the owner and the contractor as assurance that in the event that the plants do not survive or need to be replaced, that they will be replaced, so that there's never a gap.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, I think we're good on that one. And then another one is the decommissioning plan. So I have submitted a solar design associates their review as well as a revised proposal for the decommissioning plan. So I don't know if you want to talk about the proposal versus the comments that Brayton or that solar design offered.
Yeah, our decommissioning plan, as we prepared, was reviewed. And the comments made were acceptable, and I believe we have a final form at this point.
Okay, so the question is to, I guess, members, if the 489,005 is an acceptable
It is.
amount.
It is.
I know it's acceptable to you. I want to
Oh,
know.
yeah. Well, but it was. Yeah, I say that, but it's been reviewed by your peer. So I guess the question is to them. I understand.
Oh, who reviewed it? Oh, well, it's so Kelly, actually, I don't know. Did you review it along with, they said that you reviewed it along with solar design?
We reviewed it just for basic or general conformance before we forwarded it along to Solar Design Associates. And then I think Solar Design Associates definitely reviewed it in more depth. And they had comments just as it related to proportion wise. So they used another project as well just to compare. So they came back with their first set of review comments, to which Decrete revised their decommissioning plan, and Solar Design Associates again reviewed the revised decommissioning estimate and found that their values were reasonable. And so they issued formal approval of it. Solar Design Associates did.
Okay, so I know how the board feels about this, if everybody has a copy of it. Because this is a bond that they will execute at the time of recording to ensure that in the event or when the solar farm is no longer producing, or if it's abandoned, there is a bond there to provide funds to basically return it to the former site. That's to remove everything on site and to return the soil to as it was, basically, to put the land back. The only thing I noticed was it said it wasn't to remove the fencing, and usually we have the fencing go as well. don't remember where I read it. But
Hey, Rick.
fencing was going to stay. I don't remember where I saw that. I don't know if we want to include that all fencing along with that will need to be removed.
We usually don't include the fencing because if the owner wants to continue to, I mean, they can still, the fencing is not necessarily part of the solar field. If they want to fence their property, they can, but if that's something that the board thinks is necessary, I don't see an issue in including that.
Okay, I don't know. Somebody has to speak up what they want to do with that. If they want to leave it as is, or if you want to include the fencing as part of the decommissioning plan. Basically, consensus of the group, if you are accepting, I think we need to vote on the amount. We've done that in the past. So I don't know if anybody else has any other comments or questions.
Madam Chair, I did have one question, and it relates both to the decommissioning plan, but also just a further clarification on the service conduit that was discussed. I wondered, first of all, what the depth of that trench that the conduit will be placed in is, and then is that also included in the decommissioning plan? The supplied conduit?
Yeah, good. Yes, so good question. So Joe can speak to the trenching and the depth for that conduit as part of the engineering, and that will be part of a DPW review. But the decommissioning bond does not address the ductwork, so the ductwork would not be removed. Essentially, once that ductwork work goes in, it's part of the existing infrastructure. It gets coordinated with National Grid, and it remains. So if this solar farm becomes decommissioning, it doesn't mean we're pulling wires out of the roadways. That stays in place. That's going to be there. The depth of the trenching, I think that, Joe, do you know that at this point?
Not at this point, but usually duck banks have about 2 to 3 feet of cover or 2 feet in depth. So maybe 4 to 5 feet below grade, depending on infrastructure and items in place.
Yeah, and that would be done pursuant to town's regulations with regards to the town roads and DOT regulations with regards to state roadways. And a good chunk of that 4-mile trench is part of the RIDOT. It's going to be within RIDOT's purview. So we would need their permit and their review once we get out there to do that work.
And then just a follow-up. Thank you for that. So in the future, if the solar array were decommissioned, but National Grid still had a use for that, can it be retrofitted for other uses, or is it?
Yeah, that ductwork is there, and it can be utilized any which way between National Grid, the city, and the town. It's a part of the infrastructure. So we're paying for the infrastructure. We're utilizing that infrastructure. But essentially, it's going to be owned by the municipality for that's on the town right of ways, and the state for the state right of ways.
Okay.
So
it's not like exclusive then. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like it's like using your backyard. We're going to do the work, but you get to keep it.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry, Rick.
Yeah,
Peter,
go
sorry.
ahead.
So I have Rick on my cell phone because he's still trying to get in, but I think you might want to. He wants to verbally give you his blessing on the stormwater plan, and so we have it for the record.
Oh, all right. Okay.
So Rick, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Wow.
So thank you, Mike. Thank you, Susan. This is Rick at DPW. I have no problem with the stormwater plan that's been reviewed previously, but I don't know if there was other questions, Susan. I could hear intermittently. I'm having computer issues, and then I got kicked out, and then I got back in. So I don't know if I missed any other questions you want, Susan or Mike.
I don't know. Is there any other of these plans that they've done, the habitat, the solar O&M or emergency response or landscape plan or decommission plan that you want to comment on or have any questions with?
No, I'm all set with all of those. The only point I would make is anything left in place. I heard, maybe it was Kevin or maybe it was Joe saying that the duck bank would be left in place. That's fine as long as whenever anything is disconnected, there are no open ends that could be, a source of sinkholes. For instance, if the duck bank is cut, the conduits are cut, and they're not capped, and then soil simply goes into them and causes a sinkhole. So as long as the duck banks are left in place and anything that's open at the end is capped, DPW doesn't have a problem with duck banks, conduits, et cetera, being left in place underground.
Madam Chair, this
Yeah,
is
Rosemary.
Rosemary speaking. I have a concern and a question for Rick. Have you actually looked at this decommissioning figures that we have?
That was a while ago, and I'm not up to date or have the training to know whether or not they are reasonable, but they looked reasonable when I looked at them a month or 2 or 3 ago, whenever it was.
Right. We don't know the life expectancy of the project. So I'm looking at 1.3 removal of conduit runs, 31,000. Doesn't seem like much to me.
Well, I just want to comment. So we did, and Kelly, we did hire through our engineer, our own expert to review this, and they came down. So unless we have another expert that says that this is a not a good figure, these are our own experts that looked at this plan and have signed off on it. So we have to be very careful when we interjecting our own personal knowledge that are not based upon any expert. And Susan, I just refer you to that case that I sent you a couple of weeks ago about these kind of issues. So we've had our consulting engineer look at it, who then sent it to a professional engineer to look at the decommissioning, and they had some comments, and the developer accepted those comments and incorporated it into the bond. So from a legal perspective, unless we have our own, unless individuals of this board are experts in the area of decommissioning, I tread lightly as to talking about whether it's good or not. That's why we hire the experts to give us their opinion. And Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have signed off on it, and our own experts have signed off on the decommissioning.
Correct. So Solar Design Associates is the primary engineer to review it in its specificity and everything that it entails. I do know that the first iteration of the decommissioning estimate was reviewed, and Solar Design Associates actually compared that again with an approved, I believe it was either Wingover or Cook Farm, but so they compared it in terms of what a reasonable ballpark range might even be before they looked at the specifics. So I know that the first iteration was even, I believe it was doubled in terms of price and cost. So it is aligned with another approved Tiverton solar project, and obviously proportionately. So Solar Design Associates did look at that.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that's all clear on the record.
Well,
And this is Rick, and DPW's point of view and logic is directly in line with yours, Mike.
And Madam Chair, if I can add quickly, so these numbers are specific only for the site. So when we're talking about removal of conduit runs, we're talking about those conduits that are on site, the electrical components solely on the field, nothing to do with infrastructure for offsite. And so, it looks like a small sum, but believe it or not, I mean, tearing things down, if anyone's ever done demolition, they'll know it's a lot cheaper to demolish something than it is to construct it. And that's why sometimes these numbers seem to be much lower. And we've heard in other communities, well, can you install the conduit for 31,000? And the answer to that is obviously no, not even close. But I can certainly rip it apart for 31,000.
Okay, my only other comment is under SDA's recommendation. If you could just explain to me clearly. It says SDA estimates the decommissioning costs are about 1.5 to 2 times low for the Brayton solar farm. That's, I'm not sure what that's saying, if it's twice as, 2 times.
That was the first iteration. So that was their comments provided just for the first submission, I should say. So the first submission, the total price came in at X dollars amount. And once SDA compared that and looked through the specifics of how it was broken down, they were saying that they estimated it to be about 2 times or 1.5 to 2 times too low. And so Dupree revised the overall decommissioning estimate and took into account SDA's comments and therefore essentially upped the total amount so that it was reasonable compared to other projects and also each specific line item.
Oh, so it was saying that their first submission was 1.5 to 2 times too low for what was required, not what you're currently proposing.
Correct. Yep. So I think they did put another line or paragraph in their report, and it's sooner. So I guess it's in chronological order, where with the oldest review is last. And I thought they had like a short paragraph somewhere above that that said that they do formally accept and approve the decommissioning estimate as it's been revised. So it had been multiplied by 1.5 to 2 times, and the original one was that much too low.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right, thank you, because that wasn't very clear with that reference. Okay, does anybody have any other comments or questions then, or are you ready that we take a vote to approve?
The only question I have with John, Madam Chair, is, John, the bond is it something that you pay on an annual basis, or is it how is that going to work? Because I like to have on the bond, and I haven't looked at the actual form yet, but you know, if the annual payment is not made, that the town be notified, that we put on the notification.
We'll do that. So the bond is similar to what you would receive if we did a road opening or if you did a subdivision. And so that will be obtained, paid upfront, and then there will be annual payments on it. And we will include a cancellation notice so that the town's made aware of that in the event that there's non-payment or anything like that.
Okay, that would be thank you, John. I appreciate that. We're
And
doing that
just,
as a matter of course, yeah.
Yeah, and just to be clear, so the decommissioning bond will be obtained prior to obtaining the building permit. So not prior to final plan approval.
It's not prior to recording?
No, and not prior to recording, because if we don't build it, there's no bond to obtain. So we need an actual building permit to actually have the bonding authority or the bonding agency or insurance company issue the bond. They're not going to issue a bond on approval. They're going to issue a bond on a building permit.
Okay. Are you okay with that, Mike?
Yes.
Okay.
Stuart
Mike,
has
is
his hand up.
Is that the way we did it with Wingover?
I don't even remember. I don't remember how we did it. I don't know. Stu, did you have your hand up? Do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the name of the archaeologist from PAL. Is she still with us?
Yes,
Ms.
I'm
Cox.
here.
Yeah, I was going to do
Good.
that as soon as we finish the decommission. As soon as we
Oh, I'm
finish
sorry.
the
I'm sorry.
That's the next.
I thought you were ready to vote.
Well, yeah, that's what, need a motion to accept their decommission plan proposal of $489,005 to run for the
Rick, you're still
life,
there, right? You can hear this?
Yes, I can.
to run for the life of the solar farm. And it will be recorded as a bond and issued prior to the building permit approval.
So moved.
Okay. All right, so I have to do an audible vote, or is there any comments or questions before?
We need a
do
second.
Second.
Thank you.
Second? Oh, he did second. I thought Peter
No,
seconded. it.
Peter moved it and Janice seconded it.
Oh, Peter. Okay, so now do we have any other comments or questions? Everybody's understanding how this is going to work? Okay, So audible vote.
Susan, hold on. Sorry. Can you read the motion again, please?
Oh, well, I just kind of said it.
So I was reading something. and then-
It's a motion to accept the $489,005 performance bond for the decommissioning of the Brayton solar farm, and it was required prior to the issuance of a building permit with annual renewal for the life of the solar farm. That's everything, isn't it?
Thank you.
Yes. I think that's everything. Okay. So I'll go do the vote. Rosemary,
Yes.
Janice,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Adam,
Yes.
Stuart, Stu,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Okay. I think that's everybody, right? Okay. All right. So that bond, I guess, when it issued, Mike, you'll review it before it's recorded and the building permit is issued.
I think he'll submit it with the building permit or soon thereafter. That's how it usually works.
Yeah, just so it's reviewed. Okay, so then another item is the Archaeological Survey demolition. So Stu, I'll go ahead and call on you now because you have some things to say.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Back in the fall, when we approved preliminary plan, we did set a condition, and that condition was we set a condition, several conditions actually, on the preliminary plan approval. And one of those was, and I quote, provide an archaeological survey following demolition of historic structures for possible artifacts. Following that condition, which was recommended to the planning board by the Tiverton Historic Preservation Advisory Board, subsequent to setting that condition, in late October 21, the chair of the Tiverton Historic Preservation Advisory Board sent a letter to you, Susan, and also to Jennifer Siciliano, requesting that copies of that letter be made available to all members of the planning board and to all members of the town council. I actually have the email in front of me. I believe so Susan, with your permission, could I please read that letter to the planning board, because the letter was never distributed. Now, I want to just say, this is not a letter from a crank or a busybody. This is a letter from a town appointed town board. So can I have your permission, Susan, to read the text of that letter, which the board has been denied?
Yeah, it's one page. Yeah, you go ahead and read it into the record.
It's one page. It's quick. It's from the chair, who is Susan E. Anderson, and it reads, members of the planning board and town planner. The members of the Tiverton Historic Preservation Advisory Board voted unanimously, Stuart Hardy recused, to send you a letter regarding the demolition of the Circus 1773 Brayton Homestead at 446 Brayton Road. This property was the fifth lot of the 50-acre Pocasset purchase lots. The original owner of this property was Thomas Shreve, who sold part of it to Jane Groves, widow of Richard, in 1773. Part of it was also sold to David Manchester in 1772, and another part to Ephraim Chamberlain in 1770. The Groves acreage remained in their family until 1839, when Gardner, son of Gardner, sold it to Borden Brayton and Rodney Brayton, who was the son of David Brayton. Both Borden and his father David were Revolutionary War soldiers. When Rodney died, his father inherited it and sold it to Timothy Brayton in 1876. It has remained in the Brayton family since 1839. As you know, the Brayton homestead still remains on the property at 394 Brayton Road and is listed is listed in the Rhode Island Historic Preservation and Heritage Commission records as being a late 18th century house with buildings. It is also listed by Timothy Brayton as being a, and I quote, place worthy of mention, unquote, in the Rhode Island Tercentenary of Tiverton, which was a book published by the Tiverton Historical Society in 1936. She goes on to say, we understand that this 18th century homestead will be torn down as part of the master plan approval conditions for the Brayton solar development. And then you have recently added a further condition for an archaeological study post-demolition. We request that this archaeological study should be done pre, during, and post-demolition, as there could be architectural or other items that should be saved as part of Tiverton's history. The Tiverton Historical Society and or members of our board should be on site to flag any potential items to be salvaged. We know that many older homes put unique items within the walls during construction. So this is another reason why there should be a study done during demolition as well. And then she wraps it up by saying, thank you for your consideration of our request for a longer archaeological study period. So subsequent to this letter, which was sent but never distributed by the planning department, we received a letter from Nicole, who was with us tonight, and Nicole's letter is dated November 9, 2021. And Nicole tells us that, yes, we will go ahead and provide an archaeological survey. She says, following demolition of historic structures for possible artifacts. And she said that she's taken the matter to PAL, the Public Archaeological Laboratory, and then they'll be coming up with a plan. So that's all I had coming into this meeting tonight. And now I'm hearing the archaeologist who was present with us tonight from PAL, the Public Archaeological Laboratory, which is a very fine organization and has done a lot of work in the town of Tiverton, tell us that no, we're not going to have an archaeological survey after all, that she is recommending that we do some kind of a generic study of 19th century homes, not 18th century. So my question to her before I raise some other issues, my question to her is, are you proposing a study that is specific to the Brayton homestead, or are you talking about some kind of a generic description of old buildings in Tiverton?
So what I was proposing, not having knowledge or read the letter that you just read to us, thank you, it's quite comprehensive, was a study specific to the Brayton homestead. What I was conveying tonight, I think, was doing an archaeological study post demolition would not be very effective. That
makes a lot of sense to me as well.
Right. And the only thing that I had to go on was the recommendation that an archaeological study be done post demolition. So that was my response to that.
I have a lot of respect for PAL, and your recommendation may make sense, although I think doing a pre-demolition inspection of the property would be preferable. But I have two issues to raise now. First of all, the Tiverton Historic Preservation Advisory Board, who has been talking about this property for months and months, and who has appeared before the planning board on a number of occasions to talk about this property, they have not been informed of this change of plan that you're proposing tonight. they should have been made aware of this some time ago so that they could get together in a meeting and say, does this make sense or not? The town recognizes them, not the Tiverton Historical Society, which is private sector, but rather this public sector body, which is appointed by town council, and which town council relies upon for input on historical preservation issues. So they know nothing about this, zero. So we don't have their input. The second issue I have is a legal issue. When we adopted the condition on preliminary plan approval back in a fall meeting, I think it was in September, we voted on that. In order to rescind that condition tonight, we have to have another vote. And since that vote is not on our agenda, I don't believe we can do it. And I'm very disappointed because I was really hoping that we could wrap up Brayton Solar tonight and approve their final plan. But under the circumstances, I'm not sure I can vote for final plan approval. In fact, I think the legality of it is questionable since they have not met the condition that's specified in Archaeological Survey. Now, maybe the developer would like to reconsider that right now. So I don't know how to proceed on this.
Can I add a comment to this too, just to clarify? Mr. Hardy, you had mentioned the letter that I had submitted on November 9th, where we very specifically said that we would conduct an archaeological survey, and we said we would do it prior to demolition, but it was for structures that were deemed to be historic by the Rhode Island Historical Preservation and Heritage Commission.
It is. This one is. I have the documentation on it. It is in a publication, 1983 publication of historic properties in the town of Tiverton. So, right. So the letter that was referred to by the representative from PAL earlier this evening was incorrect. They're not, it was an honest mistake, I'm sure, but that property is in fact in the records in the inventory of the Rhode Island Historical Preservation and Heritage Commission, and that has been brought to the attention of the planning board by Susan Anderson, the chairman of the Tiverton Historic Preservation Advisory Board, if you remember that. So
in the letter sorry, that Nicole, you had read, I just wanted to say I had never heard the letter that you also read. That was the first time of hearing that from the Tiverton Historical Commission. Right. All I can say is part of the diligence is to reach out to the Historical Preservation and Heritage Commission because they have the records for that. I don't know, Deborah, if you want to expand upon, I'm not familiar with the differences between that. I just know that at the very beginning, that was one of the aspects that we looked at to find out from the archaeological perspective.
And Madam Chair, just 2 points. One with regards to the legality. I think it's certainly within the purview of what's been advertised for this evening, which is the final plan approval and possible vote, to have a discussion with regards to all of the conditions, both preliminary plan conditions and if there's any final plan conditions. And as I initiated our presentation and discussion, our position was that we have met all your conditions, and this condition for preliminary plan approval was to provide an archaeological survey following demolition of historic structures. That contemplates that it would be subsequent to final plan, but it would be part of the overall approval condition. We can still meet that condition, and we've provided a correspondence dated November 9th by Sage Environmental saying we would do that. The reason we brought Deborah Cox here tonight is to describe an alternative that we think is more sensible. But again, it's only for discussion. As far as we're concerned, the board doesn't need to vote on anything with regards to the archaeological study. We can proceed with what preliminary plan has. But if the board wants to modify or alter the condition, I think it's within its purview to do it as both a board and also well within the statutory parameters for voting this evening because it's been properly notified. And finally, this is not a public hearing. This is final plan. Many times final plans are done administratively. So the board can and has a wide purview, a wide spectrum here to discuss conditions going forward and also discuss conditions for preliminary plan. But I think the final and most important point is the archaeological study was not a condition for final plan approval. It was essentially a condition of overall development. And we still can meet that. And I'm not saying that we won't meet that or can't meet that. We're saying that we could probably do something different if that's something that the board would entertain and want to vote. If not, then that's fine. It certainly doesn't prohibit approval this evening for final plan.
No, thank you, John. I understand what you're saying, and I don't want to be unreasonable, but the process has not been carried out in a proper manner. Stakeholders that have a right to be informed have not been informed, and therefore the planning board has been denied the guidance that we need from the Historic Preservation Advisory Board. I very much want to approve the final plan tonight. I do agree with Deborah, who made the point earlier, Deborah Cox of PAL, that that doing an archaeological survey after the 18th century homestead has been torn down probably doesn't make a lot of sense, because all you'll see is debris. And if that demolition is insensitive, with a backhoe or a bulldozer going in and just knocking it down rather than taking it apart, there's not going to be anything there. I mean, if there were anything in the walls, which is often the case with these 18th century buildings, if there were any distinctive architectural designs inside the house, that's all destroyed. So I completely agree with Deborah that it probably, that just doing a survey, an archaeological survey after the building has been demolished probably doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think Deborah is probably correct that it would make more sense to do a study of the building from the records and materials that are available. But would you, John, would you agree to having PAL come in and doing an archaeological inspection of the property before it is torn down? They could come anytime. I don't think Elsie Brayton is still living there. I think that the building is vacant. They could come anytime at their convenience. They could look around, they could take pictures. Then they can write up a little report on the building and its history, and that would be very useful. But if no one goes into that building, and we just use the records that we can find in land evidence records and so on, well, Susan Anderson of the Historic Preservation Advisory Board has already done all of that work. So I don't think, Deborah, that you're going to tell us anything we don't need unless you actually inspect the building. And I know there's a little bit of cost for you coming out. I think you're still up in Pawtucket, coming down to Little Tiverton to do that. But I think that would be very helpful, and that would be my recommendation. But that's up to John to tell us. John, is that acceptable to you?
It is. So let me clarify. I agree. I mean, the reason why we brought Deborah here is we felt that doing the archaeological study after demolition just didn't make sense. And so we thought about doing the write-up. I think that it makes better sense to do it prior to demolition. We don't have a disagreement in doing that. And I think you heard in Deborah's testimony and in my discussion beforehand that we would also be willing to work with the town of Tiverton's Historic Society or Commission to work conjunctively on that survey or that write-up so that the town has it for its
If you
benefit.
could, if you could tell us when Deborah or one of her colleagues from PAL comes down to Tiverton, the appropriate people in town who have the credentials and have been appointed by town council could perhaps meet with her at the property and go through the property.
Yeah, we can do that. And what I would offer.
It doesn't satisfy the condition of actually being there when demolition occurs, but I'm guessing that demolition will be so quick and so brutal that there wouldn't be much opportunity for PAL to do anything, but at least to get in there before the building is actually taken down. So if you
Correct.
if you agree to that, John,
I do. I agree to that. And I think that what I would suggest is just modify the condition. You can make it a condition of final plan approval.
No, we can't do that, John. We don't put conditions. We can simply take your word for it. We know you've been operating with the town in good faith. We'll simply take your word for it. That you will arrange to have PAL do an archaeological survey of the building, external and internal, before demolition, and will alert the appropriate people in Tiverton. And that person would be Susan Anderson, the chair of the Tiverton Historic Preservation Development.
I don't have an issue in doing that. I do want to memorialize it because, you know, it's a large project. It's going to be financed. It's going to be reviewed. You know, everything we've done here, we've sought to do it to the T. We've ensured that all T's are crossed and I's are crossed because this is going to be looked at once more by a higher authority, and that higher authority is a bank. And so I don't want to leave any doors unchecked or anything not done appropriately. So if we can find a way to properly memorialize that for two reasons. One is so that.
Could we memorialize it as part of the minutes?
Yes, we could do it that way.
And we could also put it in the final plan. When the final plan is approved, there's a written document that.
Yes, that's what I was going to suggest. Yeah.
Okay,
correct.
that's
Perfect.
And that probably has a little more legal, is a little more legally binding than minutes would be.
It does. And that's exactly what I was saying. So we'll note it. We'll make it a notation of final plan. And that'll be incorporated in the approval.
Susan, are you good with that?
Yeah, I was just looking at the wording from preliminary plan. The condition was provide an archaeological survey following demolition of historical structures for possible artifacts. So I think we could use our discretion. It'll just say, you know, that it'd be before demolition. And I would suggest, if everybody's agreement, that we could have that comment in the decision, final decision, and that you'll coordinate with the Historic Advisory Board at the time of demolition, I guess with Ms. Cox, if she's going to be present. And if the board finds that acceptable, I think, you know, I suggest we go forward with that. I don't think we need to make it a condition. I think if we include it as part of the decision, you know, then that's.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think it should be a condition. I think we can include it simply as part of the approved plan, and that prior to demolition, we will do the archaeological write-up / study with notice to the town for participation.
Yes. I thank John for his cooperation, and I think that's a good solution to our problem.
Yeah, I lost Mike. I don't know where Mike is. I just wanted to.
No, it's Todd Romano. Mike lost his
yeah.
connection. He is trying to come back on monitoring though as well. So you're good.
Yeah.
What John is suggesting is perfect.
Okay. All right. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Clarification, Rosemary here. You're going to make a statement on the final plan. Is that correct? Of this?
Yes, it'll be a notation on the final plan.
Okay, because I have a couple other things, John, that I would like to add to the final plan as well. Statements on there.
Yeah, as soon as we're almost done with, I think we're done with this, and we can move on to the plan.
Sure.
So if everybody's good with that, I think we've gone through all of your proposed plans, management plans, et cetera. And we have clarification and understanding on the archaeological as well. If both sides find all that acceptable, we can move on. Okay, I take everybody's silence as agreement.
Yep. I think we're there.
Talking to myself here, for an audience of one. All right, so we have a landscape plans and we have the final site plan. So we wanted to go through that. If people have final questions or comments for any changes prior to recording. So I mean, basically we want to approve this, and then I think, hopefully, we can be in agreement that any final changes can be done administratively. Both Jennifer will review it and with the decision, and I will review it before recording to make sure everything's on there that we discuss. So I'll open it to any of the members if they want to ask questions or clarification on anything.
Hello, this is Rick.
Okay, it's me again. So,
Yeah.
Rick, can you hear me again?
I guess while we're waiting, if he's going to try to get Rick back on. Kelly, I just wanted to ask if you had any comments or concerns with any of the stormwater, roadways, and general comments on the final plan or landscape plan?
I do not. Nope.
Okay. All right. That's good. Okay. All right. So Rosemary, did you have comments?
I just wanted, in addition to when you record the final plan or make modifications to it, that you incorporate the book and page of the administrative subdivision that was done, so you can track it.
Okay. You have something else?
No.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, so I do have some comments. Because I'm going to be looking at this, and I always like to make sure everything's there since I signed my name to it. The first thing is that this final plan is basically being approved following the administrative subdivision. So I'm asking that on the cover page and throughout, it needs to be identified no longer as 3 individual lots. Some of them have individual lots and it says lot A, but it needs to be all the individual lot people and owners should be eliminated for final plan recording because it is now a single lot. I think I found it basically on sheets 3 through 9. I think when it's on the existing, I don't know whether you change it on the existing as well, the existing survey, but I wanted all these to be the same to follow through, that this is now a single lot for final plan recording. And okay, so then on sheet 3, some of these were comments I made at preliminary plan, but I guess they didn't get completed or corrected. So on sheet 3, note 1, again, it should be, the note should read that it's a single lot, no longer that it's the 3 lots for the Platten lots. Yeah, I had a question, but the owners are still the same. That's clarified now. And I think what you could do is delete note 4 that talks about, I mean, actually it says that these lots will be subdivided into 3 lots. Actually, they were merged. But since you've identified that it's a single lot in note 1, it almost seems redundant to put note 4. I think that was, and down on the, oh no, I did it on demo notes. Oh, under the demolition notes in the second column, I don't know why it's not on there anymore. If that's where you could put that all existing structures will be removed. And then if you want to include the comment about the historical structure in there, maybe if that's where you'd want to fit it in under the demolition notes. And then down on wetland restoration at the bottom of the page in the first note, second line from the bottom, it just should say all restoration has been completed in accordance with the RIDEM approved plan. It still has the May 15th date and say must be completed, but since it's been signed off on, it can just clean that up so it knows that it's for the record that it has been completed. Okay. Again, on sheet 4, do the same thing on the first note that it's identified as a single lot. And also on note 5, I mentioned it last time. It says there were no cemeteries, grave sites, etc., but there is a cemetery on that lot, so that needs to be corrected. And again, you have the 3 lots identified. It should be, I see you have, I don't know if you still even need the, well, that's a separate, but assessor lines, but it is a single lot now, so it should be changed. On sheet 5, again, you have, I know these plans have a lot on them, but you have the 3 lots identified with the owners, as well as this, okay, well, you have it identified 3 lots as 101.08 acres. But you also, I think, still have listed the other, yeah, you still have 103 listed. Another thing I was asking, if you could be consistent through the whole plans for the driveways and buildings and all the structures, they should all say they're to be removed. On some of the plans, it says they have been removed, and then another structure says that it doesn't identify it as being removed. Yeah, so sheet 5 for the historical house, it says existing building and driveway. So there it doesn't say that it's going to be removed, but then under the sheds, you have sheds to be removed. So I just want consistency throughout the whole thing. I don't know if it's solved by putting it as under the general notes that all structures will be removed and the driveways. So you don't have to label it on every plan, but I don't know. It probably wouldn't get confusing in the future. I just wanted it to clean it up. Yeah, it's the same thing on sheet 6. You had discrepancies with labeling whether the buildings are existing or going to be removed. And on sheet 7, okay, the overall site layout, I wasn't able to find the north easement or the entrance gates. I found it on the southernmost easement where the emergency access gates are, but I couldn't find it on the north or the entrance. So you're going to add those on the plan.
Susan, if I could add, it's represented by a symbol on the plan, but we can add a call out.
Okay. Yeah, I think that one I found on there, but I couldn't find it on the entrance. Is it on the entrance? I don't know. There's just a lot there to look at.
Yeah, if you look at the southern gate, you can see a call out for the lockable gate with a
right. I see
asterisk with an asterisk symbol, and that same symbol is located at all the points. So we can just.
Where is it? Where is it on the entrance gate? I can't find the asterisk. That's what I'm saying. Is it on there?
It's like that black. There's a black symbol located within the easement.
I'm not talking about the easement. I'm talking about the driveway, the entrance to the site. I'm just asking if I mean, I can't see it. There's a lot there, but I don't
Okay.
know where you're putting the gate, but I just like you to put it on the plan.
Sure.
And same thing on sheet 8. I couldn't find an entrance gate. So if you can just make sure, yeah, on sheet 7 and sheet 8. And then the last one, sheet 9, again, is just the labeling. We have them labeled as 3 lots and then a single lot. So now as final recording, it's a single lot. So through the whole thing, if you can be consistent. Well, I know it's a lot. There's a lot on the plans, and I know you do overlays of things, so it's easy for stuff to get missed. Oh, and then Kevin, on the landscape plan, I think that was that the one thing was to, I'm trying to remember if you had it identified. Yeah, you still have it identified as 3 lots. You have 503, 103. If you can just label that also as a single lot. That was the thing too. I don't know if it's just on the first page. I think that's maybe where the only one's applicable, but if you can just go through it and any places where you might have the owner's names associated with the individual lots, if you can just change those to a single lot, since the administrative subdivision has been completed. Okay. Are you all good on that? Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So I guess what I was going to do next was go through the conditions of preliminary plan. Mr. Mancini already got it, basically said they've been met. I just wanted to review them for the board. So that we're all clear. The first condition was change of ownership, which now we're clarifying will happen after final plan recording. Merging the 3 lots into a single lot, that's been done in administrative subdivision. The final review of all legal documents and plans by the town and or consultants. We just went through all of those. The only one that's outstanding is the fire marshal. We'll get something from him prior to recording. Submit a decommissioned surety bond with an amount to be determined by the town prior to final plan recording. We reached an agreement on that with a vote, and that bond will be issued. The approval of the solicitor. All reviewed comments and corrections made to date will be made on the final plan. So before recording, I'll just review all those again and make sure everything's there. All existing structures on the site are to be removed. So that's been done, the notes on the plan. Remove the existing residential curb cuts, keeping the single access way to the site, which is going to be, is noted. Provide an archaeological survey following demolition of historical structure for possible artifacts. We've discussed that and come to an arrangement and agreement on that. No removal of stone walls from the site. That's noted at several places on the plan and has been agreed upon. Solar design associate peer review of the preliminary plan solar design to be reviewed by the building official. So they will review the construction plans. It's not done by the planning board. That's been clarified. And the landscape plan corresponds with the final plan for the roadways. And that's been completed. So that's where we stand on it. So if anybody has any final comments, what we can do is move on to the findings. All right. Okay. So you gotta bear with me. I'm going to read these because I want them into the record. They're basically the ones that were included in the master and preliminary plan with some appropriate revisions for final plan. So based on the evidence submitted, testimony received, and conditions imposed, and in accordance with the requirements of Rhode Island General Law 4553-4A45 and Article 9, required findings, Section 2345A 1 through 5 of the Tiverton Land Development and Subdivision Regulations, the Tiverton Planning Board hereby makes the following findings of fact. 1, the proposed development is consistent with the town comprehensive plan and/or has satisfactorily addressed the issues where there may be inconsistencies. Expert testimony from Edward Pimentel, AICP, and his March 15, 2019 report affirms the proposed development is supported by goals, policies, and objectives contained in the comprehensive community plan that include Chapter 5.0 Land Use, Section 5.5 Policy, support the diversification of the town tax base. Action 12B implies that the wellhead protection area is better protected if the surrounding area is not developed by housing. Action 15 indicates siting of utilities should consider design and operation with the character of the surrounding area, which for this site is a rural and sparsely populated neighborhood. Action 22 considers effective growth management policies because additional town services required are minimal. Chapter 10, Economic Development, Section 10.7, Policy recommends support of diversified industrial and commercial uses that result in net tax benefits, and Action 3 states actively pursue enterprises with the best potential for positive tax revenue, creation of job opportunities, and sustainable environmental impact. Chapter 4, Natural and Cultural Resources, Section 4.4 Policy recommends protecting the natural features of the town, and this is satisfied because this project would sustain a positive effect on the air quality and wetlands. And Action 5 is designed to minimize impacts of development to natural features and pre-development hydrology through low impact development. Number 2, the proposed development is in compliance with the standards and provisions of the town zoning ordinance. The proposed ground-mounted solar array is consistent with Tiverton zoning Article 24, solar photovoltaic system development. No additional zoning relief is required because Plat 503, Lot 103, and Plat 505, Lots 101 and 102 were merged by an administrative subdivision approved and recorded by Jennifer Siciliano, Administrative Officer, December 10, 2021, and is reflected in the final plan. Number 3, there will be no significant negative environmental impacts from the proposed development as shown on the final plan with all required conditions for approval. There will be no significant negative environmental impacts from the proposed development as shown on the final plan with all required conditions for approval satisfied based upon expert testimony and reports from the following individuals. Nicole Milanofi, PE of Sage Environmental Incorporated, provided expert testimony on habitat and grassland enhancement and the noise and carbon footprints. Mark Tremblay, certified forester, provided expert testimony on the makeup and condition of the forested and woodland areas. Brandon Fanoff of Ecosystem Solutions Incorporated provided expert testimony on the marbled salamander habitat and the natural heritage area. Kevin Alverson, landscape architect, provided expert testimony and plans for areas of increased buffer zones with revegetation and additional screening from abutting properties, planting 2,400 trees and 1,200 shrubs. David Westcott of Mason and Associates Incorporated provided a planning board requested peer review report of the project that subsequently supported the processes and findings of the applicant. Any potential environmental impacts will be mitigated by implementation of the Habitat Enhancement and Grassland Management Plan with nesting boxes, the Reforestation and Forestry Management Plan, increased buffer zones in excess of the minimum required. utilizing best management practices for stormwater control and provision for the preservation of prime agricultural soil. A wetland reforestation plan was designed and implemented by Scott Rabideau of Natural Resources Services Incorporated, and a RIDEM, RIPDES permit has been issued. Joseph Cardello, PE, formerly of Steer Engineering, the planning board's consultant engineer, approved the mitigation plan for stormwater management and the stormwater operation and maintenance plan. Number 4, the proposed development will not result in the creation of individual lots, areas, parcels with such physical constraints to development that building on those lots, areas, parcels in accordance with pertinent regulations and building standards would be impracticable unless such lots, areas, parcels are identified as permanent open space or are to be permanently reserved for a public purpose on the approved recorded plans. Plat 503, lot 101, and Plat 505, lots 101 and 102 have been merged into a single lot of approximately 101.08 acres, providing frontage and access from Brayton Road. Kelly Ravenel, PE of Steer Engineering, testified that there are no physical constraints to site access and development. All proposed land, this is number 5. All proposed land developments and all subdivision lots have adequate and permanent physical access to a public street. Physical access by means of an easement across adjoining property or lot frontage on a public street without physical access from required street frontage shall not be considered in compliance with the requirements unless specifically provided for under these regulations. See Article 8, Rural Residential Developments. Richard Rogers, Director of Tiverton Public Works, and Kelly Ravenel, PE of Steer Engineering, testified that the site has adequate frontage and permanent physical access to Brayton Road, a public street. And with that, those are the findings of fact presented for this application. Is there a motion to accept?
So I would move that the planning board finds that all 5 criteria meet positive findings.
I'll
Okay.
second the motion. Rosemary here.
Okay. All right, does anybody have any additional comments, questions, or findings of fact that they'd like to offer? Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and take a vote on the 5 findings of fact. Rosemary?
Yes.
Janice?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Stu?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, that's positive. All right, so the findings of fact. Okay. I think the last thing, Mike, is we have to do is a motion to approve, right?
Yep, accept and approve the final plan.
Right, so, okay. Is there a motion to approve this final plan?
I would move to approve the final plan.
I'll second the motion, Rosemary.
Okay. I would say incorporating all the elements, additional elements discussed this evening and agreed upon. And yes, I guess that's what I want. Stu Hardy. Okay, so Rosemary and Stu. Okay, so the motion is to approve the final plan as presented tonight with all additional comments and amendments as discussed, include and based upon the 5 findings of fact voted upon. So, any questions? Okay, vote. Rosemary?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Janice?
Yes.
Stu?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay. Okay.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Oh, congratulations.
Madam Chair.
What? Oh, I don't have any sound audio.
I have a request of Mr.
Oh.
Mancini and Mr. Duhamel. He mentioned the interconnection plan at the beginning of the meeting. Is it possible to get a copy to put in the planning board's file?
Yeah, it is. It's page 16 of the plan set.
Okay, it is the final one? Okay,
Yeah. Yep.
thank you very much.
No,
Thank
thank
you very
you.
much for this very thorough presentation application.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We appreciate the effort that both of you have put into it. I know it's been painstaking, but
Yeah, it's been 2 years for you.
yeah, it is. But the end result is a good project, well done, and it's going to be well administered. So we appreciate the effort.
Okay, all right. Anybody else have any final comments? Otherwise we can go.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much, all of you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Oh, that's it. I like our little small group. Okay. Second one is ECC Eagleville LLC. So, you know, I'm going to read it into the record, but it's the applicant requested that this be moved to the February 1st meeting, but since it's on the agenda, I'll just read it. It's for a petition for development site plan review, construction material storage yard with storage bins to build on a parcel approximately 27.7 acres located at Plat 101, Lot 601, Zero Fish Road, the Industrial Zoning District. Action, discussion, and possible vote. A time clock of 65 days to be determined. The plan was submitted on December 21st, 2021. I know Jennifer has not emailed me. She hadn't done a certificate of completeness yet. We don't have that. And I don't know. Well, I guess we won't have that. So it's just referred to us since she's going to be on maternity leave. And this item, hang on to the paperwork because this item is going to be heard scheduled the February 1st meeting, which is 3 weeks from now. Okay. All right, next one is Tiverton Planning Board approval of minutes, November 16th and December 7th. We haven't received a draft of either one of those, so those are pending. Administrative officer report. September to November 2021. I don't remember if we got that last time. Do we have that? I don't know if we have it in writing. And the last final comment is, so Jennifer is out on maternity leave, but the town has also hired a new clerk that will be, I believe, should be starting on Monday. It's a gentleman, and he had to give 2 weeks notice at his current job. So
Well, I don't know what the fuck is going on.
What? That garbled. I don't know, that garbled. So anyway, I think he will be starting next week, and I'm not sure how that's going to work, but Jennifer said she's going to talk to him on the phone. I don't know, maybe they'll FaceTime. I'm not sure how that'll work, but just so you know, there'll be somebody in the office, and that's a good thing because right now there's nobody. So
Susan, what is his name, the new person?
Edward, goes by Ed. I forget his last name. I apologize. It's Ed. Yeah, he's got a degree in communications. He does not have any land use experience, but he has worked through the YMCA program as a administrator, swim instructor. He seemed to be motivated and likes to do lots of things, multitask. So we have lots of multitasks.
Yes. Great. Thank you.
So yeah.
I looked up Jennifer's last email to us, and it was Ed Rotella. I think it was Rotella. He starts on the Tuesday.
Oh, Tuesday next week.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, because Monday's Martin Luther King Day, isn't it? Town hall will be closed. Right. So it'll be next Tuesday. Yep. So I don't think there is anything else. The next scheduled meeting, as I said, is February 1st, which is 3 weeks from now. I think this ECC is on the agenda, and we're still kind of trying to figure out when Tiverton Heights with Mr. Landry. I'm not sure when that's coming to us because it needs to be advertised.
Don't we have a time clock on that coming up soon in February?
Yes, it's February 16th. I think it was the day after we had the February 1st and the February 15th. So hopefully by February 1st, well, I don't know. That means that advertisement and abutters notices would have to go out soon, and I don't know who's going to do it. But maybe we'll just be doing an extension, requesting extension of the time clock on the 1st.
Susan?
What's that? Yeah.
Susan, this is Stu. I believe you were going to inquire if members of the planning board might be available for a second meeting in February.
Right.
Because if Tiverton, if so-called Tiverton Heights, which is really supposed to be not using that name, but if they are ready and do come back, maybe we could have a meeting of just them because it's a huge project and it would consume a whole meeting.
Right. We may have to do that, have them be a special meeting, once it gets rolling, because there'll be a lot of public interest as well as a lot of information to present. So I don't know. I guess, can you email me, my planning board chair? I'll put out one as a reminder just to try and see who's available. If we would have a quorum for the 15th, just as a backup. If we don't have anything from him on the 1st, we have to do something on the 1st or the 15th. So
I'll reach out to Bill Landry this week or next week to figure out what his plans are. I think he knows Jennifer's situation, so I'm sure he'll extend it again if he has to, but we'll have to get that advertising out anyway if he wants to go forward with it. So we got to figure out how we're going to do that.
Right. So we just need some coordination so we know where we're going with this. So
thanks.
Susan, just a clarifying question though, isn't our next scheduled meeting the 8th of February?
First.
That's the 1st.
I have it as the 8th. I don't know why. So I thought we were the second Tuesday, which is
no, we're the first Tuesday. When there were holidays, that's when
that's
moved
why.
it. Yeah, that's when we move it to the second Tuesday when there's a Monday holiday or a long holiday like Thanksgiving.
So it's actually the
Christmas, and New
1st.
Year's.
Okay.
So it's the first Tuesday of the month.
That'll also be by Zoom because the executive order expires on the 4th.
Right. So we have at least one more Zoom, and then after that, maybe we'll be released from this again. I don't know. Hopefully, we'll just have to see how the state looks. So with that, I guess, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved at 8:38.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone.